Paul Martinez's fingers trembled as they hovered over the worn keys of his portable keyboard, the echo of footsteps from hurried commuters creating a symphony of indifference around him. His twins, Sofia and Miguel, sat quietly on a threadbare blanket nearby, their school backpacks doubling as pillows while they waited for Daddy to earn enough coins for dinner. The old Central Station had become their second home. Its vaulted ceilings and marble floors witnessed to countless performances that barely registered with the rushing crowd. But tonight would be different. Tonight, a woman in an expensive coat would miss her train, pull out her phone, and capture 60 seconds that would transform everything. The question wasn't whether Paul's music was beautiful enough to change their lives. It was whether anyone would finally stop long enough to truly listen. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button for more real, emotional, life-changing stories like this, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning routine had become as predictable as the 7:15 a.m. express train that thundered through Central Station every weekday. Paul Martinez would arrive at precisely 6 a.m., wheeling a small cart containing his most precious possessions, a battered Yamaha keyboard, a folding chair with a wobbly leg, and a cardboard sign that read, "Music for Hope," in his daughter's careful handwriting. Sofia had decorated the edges with flowers drawn in purple crayon, while Miguel had added a smiley face that seemed to beam encouragement even on the darkest days. The station itself was a relic from a more elegant era, its soaring architecture a stark contrast to the modern hustle that filled its corridors daily. Massive stone columns supported a ceiling painted with faded murals depicting scenes of prosperity and progress, dreams from a time when this building represented the gateway to opportunity. Now it served as Paul's concert hall, though most of his audience rushed past without acknowledgement, their eyes glued to phones or fixed on departure boards. Paul had discovered this spot 3 months earlier, after losing his job as a piano instructor at Henderson Music Academy. The private school had closed unexpectedly when enrollment dropped, leaving him scrambling to find ways to support his 8-year-old twins. Their mother, Carmen, had passed away from cancer 2 years prior, and since then, Paul had been navigating the treacherous waters of single parenthood while battling his own grief and financial insecurity. The apartment they called home was a cramped 2-bedroom unit in Riverside Commons, a housing complex that had seen better decades. The rent consumed most of his unemployment benefits, leaving precious little for groceries, utilities, and the countless small expenses that seemed to multiply like weeds. Sofia needed new shoes, her current pair held together with duct tape and determination. Miguel's glasses had a crack across one lens that Paul couldn't afford to repair. These details haunted Paul's thoughts as he set up his makeshift performance space each morning, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a familiar coat. His musical background had begun in childhood, when his grandmother Rosa taught him to play on an old upright piano in her living room. She would tell him that music was the language of the soul, capable of speaking truths that words couldn't express. Those lessons had carried him through high school and into a degree in music education, where he'd met Carmen during a chamber music concert. She played violin with the passion of someone who understood that music wasn't just sound, but emotion given form. After Carmen's diagnosis, Paul had thrown himself into teaching with renewed purpose, believing that sharing music with children could somehow balance the scales of a universe that seemed determined to take away everything he loved. But the Academy's closure had shattered that illusion, leaving him to wonder if his skills had any value in a world that seemed to prioritize everything except the arts. The keyboard he played was a gift from Carmen on their 5th wedding anniversary. She'd saved for months to buy it, knowing that their cramped apartment couldn't accommodate a real piano. The instrument had accompanied them through moves, celebrations, and quiet evenings when Carmen would request her favorite pieces while she fought through chemotherapy sessions. Now it represented their lifeline, its synthetic keys producing melodies that might mean the difference between eating dinner or going hungry. Sofia and Miguel had adapted to their new routine with the resilience that children often display in the face of adult struggles. They would do homework on the station floor, using their backpacks as desks while Paul played. Sofia, who had inherited her mother's love for music, would sometimes hum along to familiar pieces, her clear voice adding an ethereal quality to the performances. Miguel, more practical like his father, had appointed himself as the official coin counter, carefully organizing donations by denomination in a small tin box decorated with stickers from happier times. The station's morning crowd consisted primarily of commuters heading to downtown offices, their faces set in expressions of determined efficiency. They wore expensive shoes that clipped against the marble floors with rhythmic precision, clutching coffee cups and scrolling through emails as they navigated toward their respective platforms. Most barely glanced at Paul's corner, where his music provided a soundtrack they neither requested nor acknowledged. Occasionally, someone would pause. An elderly woman named Dorothy had become a regular listener, arriving each Tuesday and Thursday with a thermos of hot chocolate that she shared with the twins. She would sit on a nearby bench for exactly 15 minutes, her eyes closed as Paul played pieces by Chopin or Debussy before continuing to her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital. Her donations were modest but consistent, usually amounting to enough for a simple lunch for the three of them. There was also Marcus, a construction worker who caught the 8:45 a.m. train after working night shifts. He would stand at the edge of Paul's performance area, swaying slightly to the music while waiting for his departure announcement. Marcus never spoke, but he left a $5 bill in the keyboard case every Friday, accompanied by a small nod that conveyed more appreciation than words ever could. These moments of connection sustained Paul through the endless hours of playing to empty air, when his fingers grew stiff from cold and his back ached from the unforgiving folding chair. He had developed a repertoire of pieces that balanced classical training with popular appeal, mixing Bach preludes with simplified versions of contemporary songs that occasionally caught the attention of younger passers-by. The goal was always to cast the widest possible net, hoping that somewhere in the diverse stream of humanity flowing through the station, someone might be moved to contribute to their survival. The children's presence added complexity to the situation. Paul worried constantly about the appropriateness of having Sofia and Miguel spend their after-school hours in the station, but he had few alternatives. Babysitters were beyond his financial reach, and the free after-school programs had waiting lists longer than his patience could endure. So, they had become fixtures in this public space, three people creating a family unit in the least family-friendly environment imaginable. Sofia had begun showing signs of embarrassment about their circumstances, particularly when classmates occasionally spotted them during the evening rush hour. She would duck her head and pretend to be deeply absorbed in homework, her cheeks flushing with the shame that poverty inflicts on children who haven't yet learned that circumstances don't define worth. Paul's heart broke a little more each time he witnessed these moments, knowing that he was failing to protect his daughter from the harsh realities that should have remained outside her 8-year-old world. Miguel, by contrast, seemed to approach their situation with scientific curiosity. He had started keeping a notebook where he recorded which psalms generated the most donations, what time of day proved most lucrative, and which weather conditions affected foot traffic patterns. His observations were surprisingly sophisticated for a child his age, revealing an analytical mind that reminded Paul of Carmen's methodical approach to problem-solving. The twins had learned to recognize the regular commuters, developing private nicknames for the people who formed the backdrop of their daily existence. There was Purple Scarf Lady, who always walked quickly while talking on her phone. Briefcase Man carried the same worn leather bag every day and had a habit of checking his watch every few steps. Sneaker Girl was a young woman who wore different colored athletic shoes each day, creating a rainbow of footwear that Sofia tried to track in the margins of her homework assignments. These small rituals provided structure and entertainment during the long hours spent in the station. Paul encouraged the children to find ways to make their unusual situation feel normal, understanding that childhood resilience often depends on the ability to adapt and find joy even in difficult circumstances. He would tell them stories about famous musicians who had overcome poverty and hardship, hoping to plant seeds of possibility in their minds. The weight of his choices pressed down on Paul during the quiet moments between songs, when the station's acoustics carried conversations and footsteps in a constant urban symphony. He questioned whether he was making the right decisions, whether there might be better ways to provide for his children that didn't involve turning their lives into a public performance. The uncertainty was exhausting, but the immediate reality of their needs demanded action over contemplation. As days turned into weeks, Paul began to notice patterns in the station's rhythm. Monday mornings brought tired commuters returning from weekends, their pace slower and their expressions more relaxed. Wednesday evening saw increased foot traffic as people made midweek social plans. Friday afternoons pulsed with anticipatory energy as the work week drew to a close. These observations helped him tailor his performances to match the collective mood of his audience, though the financial results remained frustratingly unpredictable. The keyboard itself had begun showing signs of wear from constant use and transport. Several keys stuck slightly, requiring extra pressure to produce clear notes. The power cord had developed a temperamental connection that occasionally cut out mid-song, forcing Paul to jiggle the cable while maintaining his playing rhythm. These technical challenges added another layer of stress to performances that were already fraught with financial pressure. Despite the hardships, moments of pure musical joy still emerged during their station sessions. Sometimes Paul would lose himself in a particularly beautiful passage, his fingers finding the subtle expressions that transformed mechanical note production into genuine artistry. During these instances, the station's marble surfaces and high ceilings created natural reverb that enhanced the music's emotional impact. Sofia and Miguel would look up from their activities, recognizing the shift in their father's playing that signaled when technique gave way to inspiration. The approaching winter presented new challenges that Paul tried not to dwell on too heavily. The station's heating was inconsistent, and prolonged exposure to cold would make playing increasingly difficult. His fingers already stiffened during the cooler October evenings, and he feared that December and January would prove nearly impossible for outdoor performances. The urgency of their situation was intensifying just as the weather conditions were becoming less conducive to busking. Paul had applied for numerous jobs since losing his position at the academy, but the music education field offered limited opportunities, especially for someone without extensive connections in the local arts community. General employment proved equally challenging, as his resume lacked experience in fields outside of music instruction. Potential employers seemed puzzled by his background, unable to imagine how piano teaching skills might translate to retail, food service, or office work. The children's school had begun sending notes home about various fees and expenses that Paul couldn't afford. Field trip costs, school photo packages, fundraising events that expected family participation, all represented financial obligations that highlighted their family's precarious position. Sofia and Miguel had learned not to mention these announcements, understanding instinctively that Daddy was already worried about money and didn't need additional reminders of their limitations. Sleep had become elusive for Paul, who spent nights calculating and recalculating their budget, trying to find mathematical solutions to problems that seemed to defy logic. The numbers never added up favorably, no matter how creatively he approached the accounting. Rent, utilities, food, transportation, clothing, school supplies, all competed for resources that simply didn't exist in sufficient quantities. Each day survived felt like a small victory, but the sustainability of their current approach remained questionable. The station's security guards had initially been suspicious of Paul's presence, concerned that he might be violating regulations or creating disturbances. However, his consistently respectful behavior and the children's presence had gradually earned their tolerance, if not outright approval. Officer Jenkins, who worked the evening shift, had even begun requesting specific psalms during his rounds, showing a particular fondness for old jazz standards that reminded him of his father's record collection. Paul's relationship with music itself had evolved during these months of public performance. Playing for survival added layers of complexity to compositions he had known for years, infusing familiar melodies with new emotional depth born from desperation and hope. The keyboard had become both lifeline and creative outlet, a tool for generating income that somehow managed to preserve the artistic passion that had originally drawn him to music. The station's acoustics varied throughout the day as foot traffic and ambient noise levels fluctuated. Morning rush hour created a cacophonous backdrop that required Paul to play with more volume and emphasis to cut through the surrounding sound. Evening periods allowed for subtler dynamics and more delicate musical expressions. These adaptations had improved his performing skills in ways that formal training never could, teaching him to read and respond to environmental factors that traditional concert halls never presented. Sofia had begun requesting specific pieces during their station sessions, particularly songs that Carmen used to sing around the house. Paul would play these requests with extra care, knowing that the music served as a bridge connecting his daughter to memories of her mother. These moments created islands of intimacy within the public space, transforming the station corner into a temporary shrine where grief and love could coexist with the practical business of earning money. Miguel's mathematical approach to their situation had yielded some useful insights about optimizing their busking strategy. He had determined that playing during shift changes at nearby office buildings increased donation frequency, as people transitioning between work and personal time seemed more receptive to unexpected musical encounters. His data also suggested that slower, more melodic pieces generated more contributions than complex classical compositions, though he admitted that his sample size was still relatively small. The approaching holiday season brought mixed emotions for the family. Thanksgiving and Christmas had been Carmen's favorite times of year, when she would fill their apartment with decorations and cook elaborate meals that stretched their budget but fed their souls. This year, Paul knew they would need to create new traditions that acknowledged both their changed circumstances and their enduring love for each other. The station itself seemed to reflect the seasonal transition, as commuters bundled in heavier coats and moved with the determined efficiency of people bracing against approaching winter. The marble floors grew colder, requiring Paul to wear fingerless gloves that allowed him to maintain dexterity while protecting his hands from the chill. Sofia and Miguel had learned to layer clothing in preparation for their afternoon sessions, resembling small winter explorers equipped for extended outdoor adventures. Paul's repertoire had expanded during these months of constant performance, incorporating new pieces that he learned from YouTube tutorials on his phone. The station's free Wi-Fi allowed him to research songs that might appeal to different demographics, studying chord progressions and arrangements that could be adapted for his portable keyboard setup. This ongoing musical education represented one of the few positive aspects of their current situation, forcing him to grow as a performer in ways that comfortable teaching positions never would have demanded. The relationship between Paul and his children had deepened through their shared experience of navigating uncertainty together. They had become a team in ways that traditional family structures rarely allow, with each member contributing unique skills and perspectives to their collective survival strategy. Sofia's emotional intelligence helped her read potential donors and suggest timing for specific pieces. Miguel's analytical nature provided data-driven insights about optimizing their approach. Paul's musical abilities generated the income that kept them afloat. These developments had created a family dynamic that was simultaneously closer and more complex than their previous life. The children had been forced to mature quickly, taking on responsibilities and awareness that most 8-year-olds never encounter. Paul worried about the long-term effects of this premature adulthood, but he also felt proud of their resilience and adaptability. They were learning lessons about perseverance and creativity that no classroom could provide. The station's regular commuters had begun to form a loose community around Paul's performances, even if most interactions remained unspoken. People would nod in recognition as they passed, some leaving small contributions even when they couldn't stop to listen. A few had taken photos or videos of the performances, though Paul never knew what happened to these digital recordings. The anonymity of social media meant that their story might be circulating in ways they couldn't track or control. As November progressed, Paul found himself thinking more frequently about contingency plans for the winter months. The station would become increasingly uncomfortable for extended periods, and the children's health had to remain the priority regardless of their income needs. He had researched indoor venues that might allow busking, but most required permits or fees that seemed prohibitively expensive given their current financial state. The portable keyboard had developed new quirks that required constant attention and improvisation. The sustain pedal had broken completely, forcing Paul to modify his playing style to compensate for the lack of sustained notes. Several keys produced slightly different tones than their neighbors, creating an inconsistent sound quality that professional training had taught him to notice and correct. These technical challenges added mental workload to performances that were already emotionally and physically demanding. Paul's relationship with other street performers in the downtown area had remained cordial but distant. The competition for prime locations and donor attention created natural tensions, though he tried to maintain friendly relationships with fellow buskers who understood the challenges they all faced. An elderly guitarist named Roberto had shared advice about weather protection and equipment maintenance, knowledge gained through decades of outdoor performing experience. The children's academic performance had remained stable despite their unconventional afternoon routine, though Paul knew that homework completion in public spaces was far from ideal. Sofia showed particular strength in creative writing, possibly influenced by the daily exposure to diverse human stories that flowed through the station. Miguel's math skills had improved, perhaps aided by his constant calculation of donations and budgeting exercises that had become part of their daily life. Sleep remained elusive for Paul, who often lay awake planning repertoire choices and calculating financial projections that rarely offered encouraging conclusions. The weight of sole responsibility for his children's welfare created constant background stress that affected every decision and interaction. He had learned to compartmentalize this anxiety during performances, channeling nervous energy into musical expression that somehow transformed worry into art. The station's maintenance staff had grown accustomed to Paul's presence, occasionally offering friendly conversation during slower periods. Maria, who cleaned the floors during evening hours, had shared stories about her own struggles as a single mother, creating brief moments of solidarity between people who understood the daily challenge of making ends meet. These interactions reminded Paul that they were not alone in facing financial hardship, even if their specific circumstances felt unique and isolating. As the weather grew colder, Paul noticed changes in commuter behavior that affected donation patterns. People moved more quickly through the station, focused on reaching warm destinations rather than lingering for musical entertainment. The heavy coats and gloves that winter required also made accessing wallets and coins more cumbersome, creating practical barriers to spontaneous giving that Paul couldn't control or influence. The approaching holiday season intensified both hope and anxiety for the family. December typically brought increased generosity as people embraced seasonal giving spirits, but it also highlighted their inability to participate in traditional celebrations that required financial resources they simply didn't possess. Paul wanted to create positive memories for Sofia and Miguel while acknowledging the reality of their limitations. On a particularly cold Tuesday evening in late November, as commuter traffic began to thin and Paul prepared to pack up their equipment, he noticed a woman in an expensive wool coat standing near the information board, frequently checking her phone with growing frustration. Her train had clearly been delayed or canceled, judging by her increasingly agitated gestures and the accumulating crowd of similarly stranded passengers around the departure displays. The woman appeared to be in her 40s, with professionally styled hair and clothing that suggested a career in business or media. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the kind of shoes that prioritized style over comfort, the uniform of someone who spent more time in offices than on city streets. Her frequent phone conversations indicated that she was trying to reschedule appointments or explain her delayed arrival to people who were expecting her elsewhere. Paul continued playing through his evening repertoire, focusing on pieces that provided comfort during stressful situations. The station's acoustics carried his music clearly through the vaulted space, creating an ambient soundtrack for the growing number of delayed passengers who were settling in for extended waits. He chose slower, more contemplative pieces that might help reduce the collective anxiety that delayed travel inevitably produces. Sofia and Miguel had noticed the woman as well, observing her pacing and phone conversations with the curiosity that children naturally display when witnessing adult distress. They had learned to read the emotional temperature of their surroundings during their months in the station, understanding that public spaces could quickly shift from calm to chaotic depending on circumstances beyond anyone's control. The delayed train situation created an unusual evening dynamic in the station, with larger groups of people remaining stationary instead of constantly flowing through toward their destinations. This captive audience represented a different performing environment than Paul typically encountered, offering the possibility of more sustained listening opportunities if he could capture and hold their attention. Paul decided to adapt his repertoire to the current situation, choosing pieces that might provide comfort and distraction for frustrated travelers, while still maintaining the musical quality that serious listeners would appreciate. He began with a gentle arrangement of Moon River, letting the familiar melody establish a calming atmosphere that contrasted with the growing tension around the departure boards. The woman in the expensive coat gradually moved closer to Paul's performance area, though she continued her phone conversations while walking slowly in his direction. Her body language suggested that she was unconsciously drawn to the music, while her conscious attention remained focused on her travel difficulties and scheduling complications. As Paul transitioned into a jazz arrangement of The Way You Look Tonight, he noticed that several delayed passengers had begun to gather in loose proximity to his corner of the station. The music was providing a focal point for their collective waiting experience, transforming individual frustration into a shared moment of unexpected concert attendance. The woman with the briefcase had ended her phone call and was now standing about 10 feet from Paul's setup, her attention finally shifting from her travel problems to the music being performed in front of her. She pulled out her phone again, but this time she seemed to be recording rather than making calls, holding the device in a way that suggested she was capturing audio or video of the performance. Paul maintained his focus on the music, knowing that acknowledging the recording might create self-consciousness that could affect his playing quality. He had learned during his months of busking that the best performances happened when he forgot about his audience and lost himself in the musical expression. The pieces flowed more naturally when he stopped thinking about donations and simply played for the joy of creating beautiful sounds. The delayed train situation had created an almost magical transformation of the station's atmosphere. Instead of the usual rushing and stress, groups of people were standing calmly, many listening to Paul's music while they waited for transportation updates. The marble surfaces and high ceilings that usually echoed with footsteps and conversations now carried musical notes that seemed to float and blend in harmonious resonance. Sofia and Miguel had packed up their homework and were sitting quietly on their blanket, sensing that something special was happening, even if they couldn't articulate exactly what made this evening different from their usual tests. Station sessions. The larger audience and more attentive listening created an energy that elevated Paul's playing beyond the background music it typically provided. The woman with the phone had moved even closer, now standing at the edge of the small crowd that had formed around Paul's performance space. Her recording seemed deliberate and sustained, suggesting that she was capturing more than just a brief social media clip. Her professional appearance and confident demeanor indicated that she might have experience with media production or content creation. Paul chose to end his extended set with a piece that held special meaning for his family, a gentle arrangement of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," that Carmen had loved and that often brought tears to Sofia's eyes when she heard it. The song required careful emotional control to perform effectively, balancing the hope embedded in the lyrics with the melancholy that personal loss had added to its meaning. As the final notes of the song faded into the station's natural reverb, spontaneous applause erupted from the gathered passengers, a response that Paul rarely experienced during his regular busking sessions. The delayed train situation had created an inadvertent concert atmosphere that transformed casual background music into a shared cultural experience. The woman with the phone approached Paul as he prepared to acknowledge the unexpected audience response. She introduced herself as Rebecca Chen, a talent scout for Meridian Entertainment, explaining that she had been recording his performance because she recognized exceptional musical ability when she encountered it. Rebecca's business card indicated that she worked in talent development for a company that produced content for streaming platforms and television networks. Her phone contained nearly 20 minutes of footage from Paul's evening performance, captured with the professional eye of someone who understood how to document artistic performances for potential commercial applications. The conversation that followed would later seem surreal to Paul, as Rebecca explained that she had been traveling to a meeting about finding musical talent for an upcoming animated children's series that needed original compositions and performances. Her train delay had placed her in exactly the right location, at the precise moment when Paul's busking had transcended its usual boundaries and become something extraordinary. Rebecca asked questions about Paul's musical background, his current circumstances, and his interest in composing original music for media applications. She listened to his responses with the focused attention of someone who recognized both talent and opportunity. Understanding that remarkable musical ability combined with compelling personal circumstances could create powerful content for contemporary audiences. The business cards and contact information exchanged that evening represented the beginning of a transformation that none of them could have predicted when Paul set up his folding chair and keyboard that morning. Rebecca promised to call within 48 hours after reviewing her footage and discussing Paul's situation with her colleagues at Meridian Entertainment. Sofia and Miguel listened to the conversation with wide eyes, understanding that something significant was happening even if they couldn't fully grasp the implications of talent scouts and entertainment contracts. Their father's music, which had become such a familiar part of their daily survival routine, was suddenly being discussed as something valuable beyond its ability to generate small donations from passing commuters. The train delays that had initially frustrated Rebecca and dozens of other passengers had created the perfect conditions for musical discovery, proving that sometimes the most important opportunities arise from unexpected disruptions to normal routines. Paul's consistent daily presence in the station had finally intersected with exactly the right person at precisely the right moment. As Rebecca departed on a later train, clutching her phone with its precious recording and Paul's contact information, the station began to return to its normal evening rhythm. The delayed passengers gradually dispersed as alternative transportation arrangements were made, leaving Paul and his children to process what had just occurred in their familiar corner of the marble-floored public space. The income from that evening's busking session had been significantly higher than usual, thanks to the generous donations from passengers who had enjoyed the impromptu concert experience. But the real value of the evening lay in the business card tucked safely in Paul's wallet, and the possibility that their lives might be about to change in ways they had never dared to imagine. Paul spent the following day oscillating between excitement and skepticism, wondering whether Rebecca's interest would translate into genuine opportunities or merely represent another disappointment in a series of false hopes. He continued his regular station routine, but found himself playing with renewed energy and optimism, as if the previous evening's encounter had rekindled his belief in music's power to transform circumstances. Rebecca's phone call came exactly 47 hours after their meeting, catching Paul during his afternoon performance while Sofia and Miguel worked on homework nearby. She had reviewed the footage extensively and shared it with colleagues at Meridian Entertainment, all of whom had been impressed by both the musical quality and the authentic emotion captured in the recording. The opportunity Rebecca described exceeded anything Paul had imagined possible. Meridian Entertainment was developing an animated series called Harmony Heights, focusing on a diverse group of children who solved problems through music and creativity. They needed someone to compose original songs and musical interludes that would appeal to both children and their parents. Music that could carry emotional weight while remaining accessible and entertaining. The financial terms Rebecca outlined would provide immediate relief from their housing insecurity and create sustainable income that could support the family while allowing Paul to work in his chosen field. The contract would include health insurance, equipment provision, and flexible scheduling that acknowledged his responsibilities as a single parent. Paul's first assignment would be creating 3 sample compositions based on story outlines provided by the show's writers, allowing both parties to evaluate their creative compatibility before committing to the full season's worth of material. The deadline was generous enough to allow careful composition while tight enough to demonstrate his ability to work within professional production schedules. The recording studio where Paul would work was located downtown, easily accessible by public transportation, and equipped with professional-grade instruments and recording equipment. Meridian Entertainment would provide child care vouchers to ensure that Sofia and Miguel could be properly supervised during Paul's studio sessions, removing one of the major logistical obstacles that had prevented him from pursuing traditional employment opportunities. The news transformed their evening routine at the station as Paul shared details of the contract and negotiations with his children while continuing to perform for passing commuters. Sofia and Miguel asked countless questions about animation production, television music, and whether they might appear in any of the show's episodes, their excitement building as they began to understand the magnitude of the opportunity. Paul's first day at Meridian Entertainment's studio felt like entering a different universe from the marble floors and echoing acoustics of Central Station. The building featured sound-isolated rooms filled with instruments he hadn't touched in years, recording equipment that could capture subtle musical nuances he had forgotten were possible, and creative professionals who spoke his language after months of communicating primarily through unspoken musical expression. The composition process for Harmony Heights challenged Paul in ways that reignited his passion for musical creativity beyond simple performance. Each song needed to serve multiple narrative functions while maintaining the melodic appeal that would make children want to sing along. The work required technical skills he had developed during his education and emotional insights gained through his recent experiences of struggle and hope. Rebecca served as his primary liaison with the production team, helping translate the show's creative vision into musical requirements that Paul could interpret and enhance through his compositions. Her talent for identifying and nurturing artistic ability had been proven correct by Paul's immediate adaptation to the professional studio environment and his intuitive understanding of music's role in children's storytelling. The first 3 sample compositions Paul created exceeded the production team's expectations, demonstrating his ability to write music that could carry emotional weight while remaining age-appropriate, melodically engaging. The songs incorporated subtle jazz harmonies that appealed to adult listeners while maintaining simple enough structures for children to learn and remember. Paul's success with the initial assignments led to an expanded contract that would keep him employed through the show's entire first season, with options for renewal based on audience response and network satisfaction. The financial security this represented allowed him to begin planning for Sofia and Miguel's future in ways that had been impossible during their months of day-to-day survival. The apartment hunting process revealed just how much their circumstances had changed in the span of a few weeks. Paul could now afford to consider neighborhoods with better schools, safer streets, and living spaces large enough for each child to have their own bedroom. The luxury of choice in housing felt almost overwhelming after months of simply trying to maintain their current inadequate arrangements. Sofia and Miguel participated enthusiastically in apartment viewings, measuring rooms and imagining how they would arrange furniture they didn't yet own but could now envision purchasing. Their excitement about having separate bedrooms was balanced by requests that the rooms be close enough together for continued late-night conversations and mutual comfort during thunderstorms. The move to their new apartment coincided with the beginning of Paul's intensive work period for Harmony Heights, creating a schedule that was demanding but sustainable in ways their previous routine had never been. Studio work during school hours allowed him to maintain focus on his compositions while being available for pickup and evening activities with the children. Paul's colleagues at Meridian Entertainment quickly recognized his talent for creating music that enhanced, rather than overshadowed, the animated content. Compositions that supported storytelling while remaining memorable enough to extend the show's appeal beyond its visual elements. His background in music education proved valuable for creating songs that could teach as well as entertain. The show's episodes began incorporating Paul's musical contributions in ways that exceeded the original creative vision, with his compositions becoming integral to character development and plot advancement, rather than simple background elements. The synergy between his musical sensibilities and the show's educational mission created content that resonated with both child audiences and their parents. Sofia and Miguel became unofficial consultants for Paul's work, listening to rough compositions and providing feedback from the target demographics perspective. Their insights helped Paul refine melodies and lyrics to maximize appeal for their age group, while maintaining the musical sophistication that adult viewers appreciated. The recording sessions for Paul's compositions brought him into contact with professional musicians he had only admired from a distance during his teaching years. Working alongside session players who could interpret his written music and had their own creative contributions reminded him of the collaborative joy that had originally drawn him to musical careers. Rebecca's mentorship extended beyond the immediate contractual arrangements, as she helped Paul navigate the entertainment industry's complex relationships and protocols. Her guidance proved invaluable for someone whose musical training had focused on education rather than commercial production, helping him understand how artistic vision could coexist with business requirements. The first episodes of Harmony Heights, featuring Paul's music, aired 6 months after his initial encounter with Rebecca in Central Station, marking a transformation that still felt surreal to the family. Watching television programs that featured his compositions while sitting in their comfortable new living room created a sense of accomplishment that went far beyond financial security. Paul's success with Harmony Heights led to additional opportunities within Meridian Entertainment's development pipeline, as his reputation for creating engaging children's music spread throughout the production company. The skills he had developed during months of busking, particularly his ability to read audiences and adapt his performances accordingly, proved valuable for understanding how music could serve different demographic groups. The children's school experience improved dramatically once they moved to their new neighborhood, where smaller class sizes and better resources allowed both Sofia and Miguel to pursue interests that had been impossible during their period of financial instability. Sofia joined the school choir, while Miguel discovered a talent for composing lyrics that complemented his mathematical approach to musical structure. Paul's relationship with music itself had evolved through his journey from desperate busking to professional composition, incorporating lessons learned during their months of uncertainty that added depth and authenticity to Barai. His creative work. The emotional range he could now access in his compositions reflected experiences that formal training could never have provided. The family's evening routines in their new apartment often included impromptu musical sessions where Paul would play piano while Sofia sang, and Miguel contributed percussion using household items transformed into rhythm instruments. These moments recalled the joy they had shared before Carmen's illness, but with new dimensions added by their recent experiences and hard-won appreciation for stability. Paul's first television appearance promoting Harmony Heights felt like a natural extension of his busking experience, despite the vastly different setting and audience. The skills he had developed for engaging strangers through music translated effectively to camera work, where authenticity and emotional connection remain the most important elements for successful communication. The interview segment that preceded his television performance focused on the family's journey from central station to professional success, creating a narrative that resonated with viewers who understood struggles with financial insecurity and single parenthood. Paul's story became part of the show's promotional strategy, demonstrating how talent and perseverance could overcome seemingly impossible circumstances. Sofia and Miguel watched their father's television debut from the front row of the studio audience, wearing new clothes purchased specifically for the occasion and beaming with pride that was visible even in the wide shots that captured audience reactions. Their presence in the studio represented the completion of a circle that had begun with their patient homework sessions on the station floor. The response to Paul's television appearance generated additional media attention that expanded beyond the immediate promotion of Harmony Heights, as journalists and bloggers began exploring his story as an example of how unexpected opportunities could emerge from difficult circumstances. The coverage increased awareness of both his musical talents and the broader issues of financial instability that affected many families. Paul's growing reputation in children's entertainment led to speaking engagements at music education conferences, where his experiences provided insights about connecting with young audiences and using music as a tool for emotional development. His presentations combined practical techniques with personal anecdotes that illustrated music's power to provide hope during challenging times. The success of Harmony Heights earned renewal for a second season, ensuring continued employment and creative challenges for Paul, while providing long-term security for his family's future. The extended contract allowed him to begin planning educational expenses for Sofia and Miguel, including music lessons and other enrichment activities that had been impossible during their period of financial struggle. Paul's work expanded to include live performances at children's events and educational conferences, opportunities that utilized his busking experience while providing platforms for sharing music with audiences who specifically sought entertainment and educational content. The transformation from desperate street musician to successful composer had taken less than a year, but the lessons learned during those difficult months continued to influence Paul's approach to his professional work. The vulnerability and authenticity required for effective busking had taught him to connect with audiences on emotional levels that formal training rarely addressed. Sofia's musical abilities flourished in their new environment, as access to quality instruction and instruments allowed her natural talents to develop properly. She began composing simple melodies that Paul would sometimes incorporate into his professional work, creating a collaboration that honored both her creativity and his technical expertise. Miguel's analytical nature found new outlets in the technical aspects of music production, as he became fascinated with recording equipment and sound engineering principles. His mathematical mind proved well-suited for understanding the physics of acoustics and the digital processes involved in modern music creation. The family's financial stability allowed Paul to establish a small scholarship fund for music students facing economic hardship, creating opportunities for other families to pursue artistic education. Despite financial constraints, the program partnered with local schools to identify talented students who needed instruments or lesson funding. Paul's relationship with Central Station evolved from necessity to nostalgia, as he occasionally returned to visit the location where their transformation had begun. The marble floors and vaulted ceilings that had once represented desperation now symbolized the power of persistence and the unpredictability of opportunity. Rebecca's role in Paul's career development continued beyond their initial contract, as her talent agency began representing him for additional projects in children's entertainment and educational media. Her expertise in matching artistic abilities with commercial opportunities proved invaluable for navigating the complex entertainment industry landscape. The second season of Harmony Heights incorporated more complex musical themes that reflected Paul's growing confidence and creative ambition, with compositions that challenged young listeners while maintaining the accessibility that made the show popular with families. The music became increasingly integral to the show's educational mission. Paul's story attracted attention from documentary filmmakers interested in exploring themes of poverty, single parenthood, and the role of arts in economic mobility. The filming process allowed him to reflect on their journey while sharing insights that might help other families facing similar challenges. The children's academic performance continued to improve in their new school environment, where smaller classes and better resources allowed teachers to provide individualized attention that supported their unique strengths and interests. Both Sofia and Miguel began participating in extracurricular activities that had been impossible during their period of financial instability. Paul's professional network expanded to include other composers, musicians, and media professionals who shared his commitment to creating content that could educate and inspire young audiences. These relationships provided creative collaboration opportunities and emotional support from colleagues who understood the challenges of working in children's entertainment. The family's new apartment became a gathering place for musical friends and colleagues, with regular dinner parties that featured impromptu performances and creative discussions. These social connections helped Paul maintain perspective on his success while building relationships that enriched both his personal and professional life. Sofia's school choir performances showcased her developing vocal abilities and stage presence, skills that benefited from both natural talent and the confidence gained through watching her father overcome adversity. Through musical expression, her performances drew audiences that included entertainment industry professionals familiar with Paul's work. Miguel's interest in music production led to the creation of a small home studio where he could experiment with recording techniques and digital composition tools. His projects often incorporated field recordings from their neighborhood and school, creating soundscapes that captured the acoustic environment of their new life. Paul's speaking engagements at music education conferences evolved into workshops that taught practical techniques for connecting with diverse audiences and using music as a tool for social and emotional learning. His presentations combined pedagogical theory with real-world experiences that resonated with educators facing similar challenges. The success of Paul's television appearances led to regular guest spots on morning shows and educational programs, where his story provided inspiration for viewers struggling with financial hardship, while his musical performances entertained audiences across demographic lines. These appearances increased awareness of both his artistic work and broader social issues. Paul's composition work expanded beyond Harmony Hearts to include projects for educational software, therapeutic music programs, and community outreach initiatives that used music to address social challenges. His versatility as a composer allowed him to contribute to diverse projects while maintaining focus on his core mission of creating meaningful content for children. The family's travel opportunities increased as Paul's work required attendance at industry conferences and promotional events in different cities, experiences that broadened Sofia and Miguel's perspectives while providing educational opportunities that complemented their formal schooling. These trips often included visits to music venues and cultural institutions. Paul's relationship with other street performers remained respectful and supportive, as he occasionally returned to areas where buskers worked to share resources and encouragement with musicians still pursuing their craft in burla public spaces. His success provided hope for others while demonstrating the importance of persistence and quality performance. The scholarship fund Paul established grew through donations from colleagues and fans of his work, allowing the program to support increasing numbers of students each year. The initiative became a model for other artist-supported educational programs, demonstrating how professional success could be channeled into community benefit. Sofia's creative writing skills developed alongside her musical abilities as she began crafting stories that incorporated musical themes and characters inspired by her family's experiences. Her work showed sophisticated understanding of how music could enhance narrative while maintaining age-appropriate content and themes. Miguel's technical interests led to collaborations with Paul on the electronic aspects of music production, creating a learning environment where both father and son could explore new technologies while maintaining focus on artistic quality and creative expression. Their joint projects often featured innovative approaches to traditional musical forms. Paul's work with Harmony Heights earned recognition from children's programming awards committees, with nominations that acknowledged both the musical quality of his compositions and their educational value. The recognition increased his visibility within the industry while validating his approach to creating content that served multiple purposes. The family's evening routines now included time for individual creative pursuits, as well as collaborative musical activities, allowing each family member to develop personal interests while maintaining the strong bonds that had sustained them through difficult times. Their home became a creative sanctuary that supported both individual growth and family unity. Paul's professional relationships within Meridian Entertainment led to opportunities for creative input on show development beyond musical composition, as his understanding of children's educational needs and entertainment preferences proved valuable for broader content creation decisions. His role evolved from hired composer to creative consultant. The documentary about Paul's transformation from street musician to successful composer premiered at film festivals, where it received positive reviews for its authentic portrayal of economic struggle, artistic perseverance. The film's success created additional opportunities for Paul to share his story and insights with diverse audiences. Sofia's participation in regional music competitions showcased her developing abilities while providing performance experience that built confidence and stage presence. Her success in these events reflected both natural talent and the supportive environment that Paul had worked to create for his children's artistic development. Miguel's mathematical approach to music theory began influencing Paul's compositional techniques, as father and son explored ways to apply numerical relationships and geometric principles to melodic and harmonic construction. Their collaboration produced innovative approaches to traditional musical forms. Paul's teaching skills, developed during his years as a music educator, proved valuable for mentoring young musicians he encountered through his professional work and community involvement. His ability to explain complex musical concepts in accessible terms made him an effective guide for emerging artists. The family's story became part of Meridian Entertainment's corporate social responsibility initiatives, as the company used Paul's success to promote programs supporting artists from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. His experience provided a compelling example of how opportunity and talent could combine to create positive outcomes. Paul's composition work began incorporating elements from his cultural heritage, drawing on musical traditions that connected his children to their family history, while creating content that reflected the diversity of contemporary audiences. These pieces added cultural richness to his professional portfolio, while honoring his family's background. The success of Paul's various projects allowed him to purchase a quality acoustic piano for their home, replacing the electronic keyboard that had served them faithfully during their most difficult period. The instrument became a centerpiece for family musical activities, while providing Paul with the touch sensitivity required for advanced compositional work. Sofia's involvement in school musical productions provided opportunities to apply lessons learned from watching her father's professional performances, developing skills in stage presence, audience engagement, collaborative creativity. Her success in these productions reflected both individual talent and family support. Miguel's interest in music technology led to internship opportunities at local recording studios, where he could observe professional production techniques while contributing his mathematical insights to technical challenges. These experiences provided career exploration opportunities while building professional connections. Paul's work with therapeutic music programs introduced him to applications of musical skills beyond entertainment and education. As he learned to create compositions that could support healing and emotional processing for children facing trauma or medical challenges. This work added depth to his understanding of music's power. The family's financial stability allowed them to support other musicians facing economic hardship through both formal charitable contributions and informal assistance that provided instruments, lessons, performance opportunities. Their generosity reflected gratitude for the help they had received during difficult times. Paul's story inspired other single parents pursuing artistic careers, as his example demonstrated that creative professions could provide sustainable income while allowing for family responsibilities. His willingness to share both successes and ongoing challenges provided realistic encouragement for others facing similar circumstances. The evolution of Paul's career from desperate busking to professional success represented more than personal achievement, as his journey illustrated broader themes about economic mobility, artistic perseverance, and the unpredictable nature of opportunity. His story became part of conversations about supporting working families and valuing artistic contributions to society. As the second anniversary of their first meeting approached, Rebecca and Paul reflected on the chain of events that had transformed their lives through a chance encounter in Central Station. The delayed train that had initially frustrated Rebecca had created the perfect conditions for recognizing talent and facilitating opportunity, proving that sometimes the most significant moments arise from unexpected disruptions. Paul's work continued to evolve and expand, but the lessons learned during their months of financial struggle remained central to his approach to both professional challenges and family life. The vulnerability and resilience required for effective busking had taught him to value authenticity, persistence, and the power of music to create connections across social and economic boundaries. Sofia and Miguel, now approaching their 10th birthdays, had developed into confident, creative individuals whose talents reflected both natural ability and the supportive environment their father had worked to create. Their experiences during the family's difficult period had taught them empathy, resilience, and appreciation for the stability they now enjoyed. The corner of Central Station where Paul had performed daily for months had been designated with a small plaque, recognizing the location where musical dreams took flight, a gesture from the Transit Authority acknowledging the positive impact of artistic expression in public spaces. The plaque served as inspiration for other street performers while honoring the transformation that had begun in that marble-floored corner. Paul's success story became part of the broader narrative about arts education, economic opportunity, and the importance of supporting creative expression in communities. His journey from desperate circumstances to professional achievement demonstrated that talent, when combined with opportunity and perseverance, could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. The family's evening routines now included time for gratitude practices, where they would reflect on the changes in their lives while acknowledging the people and circumstances that had made their transformation possible. These moments of appreciation kept them grounded while celebrating how far they had traveled from their days of uncertainty and struggle. Paul never performed alone again, as his professional work consistently involved collaboration with other musicians, and his family remained integral to his creative process. The isolation and desperation that had characterized their busking period had given way to rich networks of personal and professional relationships that supported both artistic growth and family well-being. The music that had once served as a lifeline for survival had evolved into a source of joy, creativity, and connection that enriched not only their own lives, but also the lives of countless children who encountered Paul's compositions through television, live performances, and educational programs. His journey from the train station to professional success had created ripples of positive impact that extended far beyond their family's immediate circumstances. As Paul tucked Sofia and Miguel into their beds in the comfortable home that music had provided, he often reflected on the unexpected ways that art could transform lives, create opportunities, and build bridges between different worlds. The keyboard that had once represented desperate necessity now served as a tool for professional creation and family joy, its keys holding memories of struggle and triumph that would forever shape their understanding of music's power to change everything. 3 years had passed since that fateful evening in Central Station, and Paul's reputation in children's entertainment had grown beyond anything he could have imagined during those desperate months of busking. The success of Harmony Heights had opened doors to international projects, with production companies from Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom seeking his expertise for their own educational programming. Initiatives. The global expansion of Paul's work brought new challenges that tested his ability to create music that could transcend cultural boundaries while maintaining the emotional authenticity that had made his compositions successful. Each international project required research into different musical traditions, educational philosophies, and childhood development approaches that varied significantly across different societies. Sofia had begun learning multiple languages through online platforms, motivated by her father's international collaborations and her own growing interest in global music traditions. Her linguistic abilities proved valuable for Paul's work, as she could provide insights into how melodies and rhythms might be perceived by children from different cultural backgrounds. Miguel's fascination with music technology had evolved into sophisticated programming skills that allowed him to create digital instruments and sound effects for Paul's compositions. His mathematical background enabled him to develop algorithms that could generate harmonic progressions and rhythmic patterns, tools that enhanced Paul's creative process without replacing his artistic intuition. The Martinez family had become advocates for arts education funding in their community, using their platform to speak at school board meetings and city council sessions about the importance of maintaining music programs in public schools. Their personal story provided compelling evidence for the transformative power of artistic education and support. Paul's work with therapeutic music programs had expanded into a formal certification program that trained musicians to work with children facing various emotional and physical challenges. The curriculum combined musical technique with psychological principles, creating a new field that bridged entertainment, education, and healing. Rebecca's talent agency had grown significantly, partly due to the success of her discovery and development of Paul's career. She had become a sought-after speaker at industry conferences, sharing insights about identifying and nurturing unusual talent while maintaining ethical standards in artist representation. The documentary about Paul's journey had won several awards at international film festivals, leading to distribution deals that brought their story to audiences worldwide. The film's success generated speaking opportunities for Paul at universities, where he discussed the intersection of economic policy, educational access, and artistic opportunity. Sofia's involvement in youth orchestras had introduced her to other young musicians from diverse backgrounds, relationships that enriched her understanding of how music could serve different communities while maintaining universal emotional impact. Her leadership skills emerged as she organized collaborative projects that showcased various cultural traditions. Miguel's internships at recording studios had evolved into part-time employment that provided both income and professional experience while he continued his education. His unique perspective as both a mathematics student and music technology enthusiast made him valuable for projects requiring technical innovation. Paul's composition work had begun incorporating elements from neuroscience research about how music affects brain development in children, creating pieces that were designed to support specific cognitive and emotional growth processes. This scientific approach enhanced the educational value of his work while maintaining artistic quality. The scholarship fund Paul had established had grown into a nonprofit organization that provided not only financial support, but also mentorship and performance opportunities for young musicians from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. The program had helped dozens of families access musical education that would have otherwise remained beyond their reach. Paul's relationship with other composers in children's entertainment had developed into a professional collective that shared resources, collaborated on large projects, and advocated for higher standards in educational media. The group's influence had improved working conditions and creative expectations across the industry. The family's travels for Paul's international work had become educational adventures that exposed Sofia and Miguel to diverse cultures, musical traditions, and educational systems. These experiences broadened their perspectives while providing real-world context for their father's creative work and their own developing interests. Paul's teaching methods, refined through years of professional experience and personal struggle, had been compiled into a book about using music to support children through difficult transitions and emotional challenges. The publication had been adopted by music therapy programs and elementary education curricula across multiple states. Sofia's creative writing had evolved to include lyrics for some of Paul's compositions, creating a father-daughter collaboration that brought fresh perspectives to children's music while honoring their shared struggle. Experiences of loss and recovery. Her work demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how words and music could enhance each other's emotional impact. Miguel's mathematical approach to music had led to academic research opportunities, with universities studying the relationship between numerical patterns and aesthetic appreciation. His work contributed to emerging fields that sought to understand how mathematical principles might influence emotional responses to artistic expression. Paul's success had attracted attention from major record labels interested in developing children's music divisions, but he had chosen to maintain independence while selectively partnering with companies that shared his commitment to educational value and artistic integrity. These decisions reflected lessons learned about balancing commercial success with personal values. The Central Station plaque commemorating Paul's transformation had become a pilgrimage site for struggling artists seeking inspiration, with dozens of musicians leaving flowers, handwritten notes, and small tokens of hope. The Transit Authority had embraced this unexpected cultural development, creating additional support for street performers throughout their system. Paul's work with international projects had led to cultural exchange programs that brought young musicians from different countries together for collaborative performances and educational experiences. These initiatives demonstrated how music could serve as a universal language that transcended political and economic boundaries. Sofia's academic performance had earned her acceptance into prestigious summer programs for gifted students, opportunities that allowed her to explore advanced topics in literature, music, and international relations. Her experiences during the family's difficult period had given her unique perspectives that enriched her academic work. Miguel's technological innovations had attracted attention from software companies developing educational applications, leading to consulting opportunities that allowed him to influence how music and mathematics were taught through digital platforms. His work helped bridge the gap between traditional education and modern technology. Paul's compositions had been performed by professional orchestras and educational concerts that introduced children to classical music through contemporary arrangements of his television work. These performances demonstrated how media music could serve as a gateway to broader cultural appreciation. The therapeutic music certification program Paul had helped develop had graduated its first class of practitioners, who are now working in hospitals, schools, and community centers across the region. The program's success had led to expansion plans that would train hundreds of additional music therapists over the coming years. Paul's story had inspired academic research into the relationship between street performance and professional artistic development, with scholars studying how public space creativity might inform educational and career support systems. This research contributed to policy discussions about supporting working artists and families. Sofia's involvement in international youth music exchanges had led to lasting friendships with young people from around the world, relationships maintained through video calls and collaborative online projects. These connections provided her with global perspectives that influenced both her academic interests and personal worldview. Miguel's programming skills had enabled him to create educational games that taught music theory and composition through interactive gameplay, products that were being tested in schools as supplements to traditional music instruction. His work demonstrated how technology could make musical education more accessible and engaging. Paul's speaking engagements had evolved beyond music education to include topics such as resilience, single parenting, and economic mobility, addressing audiences ranging from social workers, policymakers, His insights contributed to broader conversations about supporting families through difficult transitions. The nonprofit organization that had grown from Paul's scholarship fund had established partnerships with instrument manufacturers and music schools, creating pathways for talented students to access equipment and instruction regardless of their family's financial circumstances. The program had become a model for similar initiatives in other cities. Paul's international collaborations had resulted in a multicultural children's music festival that rotated between different countries each year, showcasing how various traditions could contribute to contemporary educational entertainment. The festival had become a significant cultural event that attracted families and educators from around the world. Sofia's linguistic abilities had developed to include not only vocabulary, but also understanding of how different cultures approached melody, rhythm, and musical storytelling. Her insights helped Paul create compositions that could resonate with diverse audiences while respecting cultural authenticity. Miguel's mathematical research had led to the development of new software tools for composers, programs that could analyze harmonic relationships and suggest melodic variations while preserving the emotional content that made music meaningful. His work was being adopted by musicians working in various genres. Paul's work with neuroscience researchers had contributed to studies about how musical exposure during childhood could influence academic performance, social development, and emotional regulation. This research was informing educational policy discussions about the role of arts programming in comprehensive child development. The documentary about Paul's transformation had been adapted into educational materials used in social work training programs, business schools studying entrepreneurship, and music education curricula. The story provided case study material for discussions about opportunity recognition, perseverance, and community support. Paul's relationship with other single parents in the entertainment industry had led to the formation of a support network that shared resources for childcare, education, and career development. The group advocated for family-friendly policies in creative industries while providing practical assistance for members facing various challenges. Sofia's academic interests had expanded to include cultural anthropology, motivated by her exposure to different musical traditions through her father's work. Her research projects explored how music served different functions in various societies, knowledge that enriched her understanding of her father's international compositions. Miguel's technological innovations had attracted attention from accessibility advocates interested in how digital tools could make music creation more inclusive for people with various disabilities. His work contributed to the development of adaptive instruments and software that expanded opportunities for musical expression. Paul's success had enabled him to purchase the old keyboard that had sustained them during their busking period, which he donated to a music therapy program serving homeless families. The instrument continued serving people in difficult circumstances, carrying forward the legacy of hope and transformation it had helped create. The family story had been included in textbooks about economic mobility, arts education, and family resilience, reaching students across multiple academic disciplines. Their experience provided concrete examples of how individual determination could intersect with social support systems to create positive outcomes. Paul's work with therapeutic music had led to research collaborations studying how specific musical elements could support healing processes for children recovering from trauma. This research was contributing to evidence-based approaches for using music in clinical and educational settings. Sofia's creative projects had begun incorporating themes of social justice and economic equality, reflecting her family's experiences while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of how artistic expression could address complex social issues. Her work showed promise for future leadership in arts advocacy. Miguel's mathematical approach to music had influenced his interest in architecture and engineering, fields where he could apply similar analytical skills to create structures that serve human needs while maintaining aesthetic appeal. His interdisciplinary perspective opened career possibilities that combined technical and creative elements. Paul's international reputation had led to invitations to serve on advisory boards for educational media companies, positions where he could influence industry standards and practices while ensuring that children's programming maintained both entertainment value and educational integrity. The scholarship program had expanded to include mentorship components where successful alumni returned to guide newer recipients through the challenges of pursuing artistic education while managing economic constraints. This peer support system created sustainable networks that extended the program's impact beyond immediate financial assistance. Paul's compositions had been translated into multiple languages and adapted for different cultural contexts, demonstrating how musical education could maintain core values while respecting regional variations in childhood development approaches and cultural traditions. Sofia's involvement in youth leadership programs had developed her public speaking abilities and advocacy skills, preparing her for potential future roles in arts administration, cultural diplomacy, educational policy development. Her unique background provided valuable perspectives for addressing systemic challenges in creative education. Miguel's software development had attracted investment interest from companies developing educational technology platforms, opportunities that could provide financial independence while allowing him to influence how future generations would learn about music and mathematics through digital interfaces. Paul's story continued to inspire policy discussions about supporting working families, funding arts education, and creating pathways for economic mobility through creative careers. His experience provided evidence for the value of maintaining social safety nets while investing in programs that could help people develop marketable skills. The Central Station performance area had been renovated to include better lighting and acoustic design, improvements that benefited all street performers while honoring the location's role in Paul's transformation. The space had become a symbol of how public areas could serve as incubators for artistic development and community connection. Paul's work had demonstrated that children's entertainment could address serious themes while maintaining age-appropriate content, influencing industry approaches to creating media that helped young audiences process complex emotions and social issues. His compositions provided models for how artistic expression could serve therapeutic and educational functions simultaneously. As the family prepared for Sofia and Miguel's upcoming graduation from elementary school, they reflected on how their shared experiences of struggle and success had shaped their understanding of community, opportunity, and the importance of using personal achievements to benefit others facing similar challenges.